Today MuzYoshi and I are going to be going over how to perform a trick called Palace Skip. It's a complicated trick in Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door that was discovered 3 years ago collaboratively by Solidified Gaming, Malleo, and Really Tall, but an in-depth tutorial for it has never been made, until now.
Hi, I'm Frezer, the one editing this video. This here is the table of contents covering just about everything you'll need to know in order to perform this trick. With the addition of YouTube chapters, navigating to specific parts of the video will be easily accessible. If you'd like to learn more about these tricks, there will be links to more detailed information in the video description. Without further ado, let's get started.
First, you need to kill this specific phantom member in order to get an item drop, which is RNG based, so let's go over the chances of getting one. During the run, we pick up a badge called Item Hog, which increases the chances of an enemy dropping an item into the field after you defeat it, so you'll want to be 100% sure that that badge is equipped. Furthermore, the enemy has a 1 in 10 chance to be holding an item in the battle, which increases the chances of an item being dropped from the fight. You'll want to make sure that you have 10 items in your inventory before attempting this, as we want to be able to toss the item around that the Ember drops. If the Ember does not drop an item, you'll need to soft reset the game. You can do that in TTYD by holding B, X, and start simultaneously.
Next, we'll be performing a trick called a delayed Goombella Buffer into the item we just got. Before I talk about that, I want to quickly go over what a Goombella Buffer is. A Goombella Buffer is the act of moving Mario into a trigger on the frame that Goombella's tattle is activated. You can move more or less depending on how far the control stick is moved during this time, but keep in mind that after Goombella is activated, you will no longer be able to move. This allows for some funky stuff like bypassing loading zones, but in this case, we want to be able to utilize storing Goombella's text.
You can achieve this through a number of steps. First, we need to understand the second Phantom Ember's zone. Basically, the Ember has a certain radius in which it can travel, and it cannot leave that area. We need to get the item into this zone, and there are a couple of easy ways to line that up so that we can toss the item in there. There are 2 places you can stand. Looking at that wall, you can see a row of red panels and stained glass panels, and those are what we're going to be using to line up. You can either use the second stained glass panel from the right hand side of the room, close to the safe block, or the third red panel from the left hand side of the room.
Hold Koops in place near the item, and then walk to either of those 2 positions. Release Koops to grab the item. The direction that Mario tosses the item is 50-50, so you kind of just have to hope that it goes the way you want it to. Otherwise, you have to grab it and try again. Once you get very close to the item, you will perform a Goombella Buffer into it. So once Mario hits the ground, press X to activate Goombella, then move into the item 4 frames later. Here are the 3 outcomes. If you're too late with the directional input after hitting X, you'll activate Goombella without moving into the item. If you are too early with the X press, you will end up just walking into the item and Goombella won't be activated. If you get it right, Goombella will snap to your position, you'll grab the item, then after tossing it, she will start speaking. If you did all this correctly and the item is in the Ember Zone, it will notice you after you toss the item. Then you will enter the battle with Goombella's text still on screen. Congrats! You just got text storage.
In this room, Goombella's tattle consists of 2 total text buffers. This is important to remember because you'll need to keep the text on screen during and after this battle. So once you have text storage, press B once to advance to the second text box and then press Z to scroll back to the first text box. Every time you input A, B, or X, you will need to input Z as well, as those 3 buttons advance to text, so keep this in mind when going through menus. I like to try to press A and Z at around the same time since you can press Z 1 frame before A and still keep the text scrolled back. However, some runners like to alternate between A and Z. Just do whichever feels most comfortable for you.
This part is totally optional, but will help out a ton if you fail the final step of the trick, the Yoshi teleport. Once you run away, quickly find the item and bring it over to the save block on the far right hand side of the room. Bring out Koops, still keeping the text on screen, and position yourself in front of the item. Shell toss and hold them in front of it, then stand under the block. Make sure you're still scrolling with Z to stay on the first text box during the whole process. Then you need to release Koops and jump to hit the save block right as he picks the item up. If done correctly, the item will stay mid-air while the save text is on screen. Press Z to go back to the first text box, then press B to close out of the save text, then Z again to go back to the first text box. The item will then fall to the floor. The item will remain there until either you leave the room or the next time you pick it up, and you can repeat this as many times as you like, as long as your inventory is full.
For this step, you'll need to make sure your party member is either Goombella or Koops, as Flurry and Yoshi will not work. First, make sure you are lined up correctly along the back wall. You'll want to look at Mario's shadow in relation to the wall and the golden line along the floor. There should be a little bit of light space between Mario's shadow and the golden line. Start at the edge of the Ember Zone to the right. He'll get stuck in the middle of that stained glass panel along the wall, and then count the red panels after that. The second red panel is the one you'll want to be in front of. Try to position just a little left of the pedestal, but the dead center will work fine too.
Once you're lined up correctly, begin an Ultra Hammer spin. There are 3 steps of charging the spin: 1/3 of the way, 2/3 of the way, and fully charged. You want to charge the spin 2/3 of the way, so watch for Mario's second contortion. Once you get into the battle, swap your partner in front, then switch out to Yoshi. Once again, make sure you're keeping the text on screen. Then just like before, you need to run away. Good luck! If you have to guard/super guard, make sure you're pressing Z to scroll the text back afterwards.
So the whole point of that last step was to have Yoshi clip into the back wall, since in the Japanese version of the game, pandas spawn behind Mario. Charging the Ultra Hammer specifically 2/3 of the way means Mario's back is to the wall, so Yoshi should spawn inside of it once you run from the battle. Once you're out of the battle, immediately begin holding R to go into paper mode, then rub up against him to get him inside of the wall. Be careful not to encounter the Ember again, otherwise you'll have to repeat the last step. If Yoshi spawns or clips in front of the wall, it means you were positioned too far away from the wall. If he falls out of bounds and then pops back above the ground, it means you were too close to the wall. Once he's completely clipped in, slowly edge left while still in paper mode. Eventually you'll see Yoshi come out of paper mode. At this point, walk in front of him and push him back into the wall. Now, you must make sure that you have advanced to the second text box. If you are not on the second text box, you will not Yoshi teleport.
Now that Yoshi is in the wall, you're almost ready to attempt the Yoshi teleport. This step requires a few things to be set up. You have to pay attention to both the Ember's position and how much you unspin from paper mode before you pause. First, let's talk about the Ember's position. You'll see that when it notices Mario, it stops at the edge of its zone, in the middle of the red wall panel. You want the Ember to be on its way towards you before you unspin, usually right in front of the pedestal. Now, let's talk about unspinning and pausing, since there are a handful of different scenarios you can be in. Once you unspin, you have exactly 4 frames on which you can pause. Any more than that and the Yoshi teleport will not work. Here are some visual cues on what Mario looks like on these 4 frames.
If you get a first frame pause, you can attempt Encounterless.
Encounterless works on frame 1, but it also works on frame 2. However, you'll need a frame perfect A release. I've managed this twice on my ACS files, which I'll show on the screen now. I got a second frame. Oh wait, it might still work because the party Y is at 0. I'll try, but I don't think it's gonna work since I'm so far from the center. Oh, it worked anyway. Not sure if anyone else has managed to pull this off, but just know that it's very unlikely that you'll manage to get encounterless without the first frame pause. I use a visual cue for this trick. It's different than others, but I think this one's more reliable. Mario has this turnaround animation that only occurs if Mario is above 5 HP. So sometimes I'll use Sort Glitch to fill Mario's health to full if he's lower than 5 health. I watch Mario's feet as he turns around and press X on this frame. I hold top right so that Mario will turn around for my visual cue. I'm using a CRT as it has the least amount of latency. If you're on an HD TV, watch the hand on the top left disappear for a visual cue. Encounterless is great and all, but what happens if you end up with a 3rd or 4th frame pause? Well, you could still perform Palace Skip. It's just a little more difficult. Let's talk about the 2nd frame pause for a moment. You have 2 choices here. You can risk the frame perfect A release to get encounterless, or try to frame pause again. If you want to go from a second frame to a third frame pause, you can press B to close the inventory and spam the D-pad in hopes of getting a 1 to 2 frame pause. Now, you can perform palace skip using the Ember. Instead of holding up or upright, you'll need to hold straight right, as we'll want to encounter the Ember. When you close the inventory, press X then A right after, while holding right to flutter into the Ember. If done correctly, you'll be halfway in the floor and you'll encounter the Ember. If your X press was too late, you'll fall straight through the floor, and if you're too early, you'll be unable to move in the butt scooch animation until you're encountered again by the Ember. After encountering the Ember, you're free to run from the fight mashing A to run, but be sure to hold straight up or upright when leaving the fight to hit the loading zone. If you manage to pull it off, congratulations, you now know how to perform palace skip. I'd like to thank MuzYoshi and YoshiZilla for providing me with audio explanations, as it really sped up the production of the tutorial. I'd also like to thank SwayNC, Vyneeve, Solidified Gaming, Sjorec, SuperSayinGengar, Malleo, Monado, Reed, Really Tall, Jasper, Jdaster, Malleo, Zephiles, Evan44, and PistonMiner for inspiring me to run this game and make this tutorial. A link to the TTYD speedrunning Discord will be linked in the description, as well as the TTYD speedrun page, where there are guides for just about everything.